Hi everybody. So Steve Jobs passed away, and may he rest in peace. I was never I was never an Apple user at all. I never had an Apple device in my life. I don't even use QuickTime, but I can certainly appreciate what Apple has done for its branding, what Steve Jobs has done for the company and the company's image. But the one way that this sad event affected me is that I rewatched Pirates of the Silicon Valley, and maybe this is morbid, maybe not, but I want to do a review of that movie because, before The Social Network, there was Pirates of the Silicon Valley. For those of you who don't know about it, it's a movie that details the rivalry between Steve Jobs and Bill Gates in the late 70s, early 80s. There are three things that I love about this movie. First of all, it's a made-for-TV movie, which proves that even movies that are made for TV can be awesome if the story is good, and it doesn't need like a big budget or a big studio behind it. Second, the movie becomes more meaningful with time. It becomes better with time. This came out in 1999, and it's definitely a different experience watching it now as opposed to 1999. And third of all, it's just a perfect blend between documentary and fiction. The movie rests on the performances of Noah Wyle, who is an actor coming from TV, coming from ER, starring in Falling Skies in the present, and the performance of Anthony Michael Hall as Bill Gates. But they do such a good job because Steve Jobs and Bill Gates are portrayed as outsiders fighting against the system, but Steve Jobs, for instance, wanted to completely change the system, he was kind of a hippie and fought against big corporations, whereas Bill Gates, he was more of a pragmatic and was more like willing to work with big companies like IBM and such, as long as they would pony up the cash and they would let him keep control of the technologies that he would develop for them. So you definitely have two very different visions kind of working towards the same purpose of bringing on this great computer revolution. The movie becomes more meaningful with time because these technologies are more and more ingrained into our daily lives. And so right now when we watch this movie and scenes come on, like there's this scene where big company executives for a computer company say something like, what would regular people need with computers? It really sets you into it really flabbergasts you because the people that were supposed to be in charge of the revolution didn't know the revolution was happening. And then there's another scene where Bill Gates approaches Steve Jobs at a computer fair very early on, one of their first face-to-face interactions, and Steve Jobs brushes him off, ignores him. So it's another one of those powerful what-if moments that only time can bring about, where you think, what would have happened if Steve Jobs and Bill Gates hit it off right away? What kind of technologies could they come up with together? Now, the movie is a perfect blend of documentary and fiction. There are a lot of scenes where characters break the fourth wall, talk directly to the camera. There are even excerpts, like in a regular documentary, of actors staying in character while talking to the camera about this and that, about the events that they were taking part in. But it should be noted that this is fiction, so they present a slanted view of events and of characters, but you really can't change the fact that after watching this, you get a sense of knowing these people. You get a sense of knowing the people behind the technologies that you are using right now. It should also be mentioned that maybe the movie doesn't have the same dark vibe that The Social Network has, but of course that stands to reason because The Social Network was directed by David Fincher. The movie does have its own kind of dubious morality. They show people stealing stuff from each other, behind the scenes stuff, like scandalous things, but it doesn't really point fingers at anybody. And you, as the end user of the technologies that they eventually came up with, you can't really point a finger and say, Bill Gates was a bad guy because he stole, or Steve Jobs was a bad guy because he stole. Ultimately, progress will happen regardless of the morals of any particular situation. And if there's one thing that maybe I don't really like about the movie, is the fact that these characters are presented in such an exaggerated, goofy manner sometimes that you can't really expect them to be loyal to any degree. So maybe I would have liked it more to be, for them to be handled in a more professional manner, to be represented as bigger professionals. So when behind the scenes backstabbing stuff does happen, it's even more jarring. So in conclusion, Pirates of the Silicon Valley, with all its inconsistencies, is a movie that I love, and like The Social Network, it provides you insight into the people who design the technologies that pretty much control our lives. And I can't for the life of me tell you how my computer works or how Facebook works, but I can tell you something about the people who design them, or the people who design the technologies that they work on, they use to work. So, overall, people are way easier to understand than technologies, or better yet, characters. Characters are easier to understand than machines.